Ooh, howdy.
Good evening.
You want to stop recording for 1 sec? Okay.
Everybody on the screen here.
Hmm, excuse me.
Okay. Perek Yud Aleph, Hitavut Yetorat Babel. And that in the book is on page Kuf Samech Aleph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Perek Yud. Udbayisun. Then that which you asked. Rabbanan Savurai, Hech Nizdiru Acher Ravina. How they how are they arranged after Ravina? Umi Malach Achrem, and who was the reigned after them. Also, is my from that time till today. So here's a long discussion here in the printed version. I don't know if he has anything like this, and no, nothing like it in the screen version. It says that it says Hayu Balei Samchuyot, and that's his translation. Miluli, literally Melech. Ephrati, whoever he is, Yitzia Hashara Manyanet, gives us interesting suggestion. Says Zikne Kiruan. Yells the Quran who asks the question, Munyanima Michaladas Ezasuk Hara, Machavina Shayasof Hara. And that what type of Hara existed after Rabina if he was Sof Hara. Zelashoina be Tochen Dvarav. It's brought down here in the footnotes. Kufata Savrim Safruta. Sharei Reb Shirgon Matzeh Bigarto Lorak et Ishtal השתלשלות הקבלה של התורה שבעל פה בבבל דור אחר דור. He want Shirgo is literally lecturing in his letter not just on the developments of the transmission of Torah in every Torah Sheba'al Peh and Bavel generation of generation. He also wants to explain the authority of the sages of each generation to Paskin. So the this authority emerged or emanated from the governance of the the Exarch, Rosh Hagolo. Roshusko law. There was a exarchy, the freedom of Shirgon, Kol Yimei Babayisheni, which we have not seen yet.
Hmm.
Chachmei Bavel, Shenismanu Apir Shegol Adonu Dine Israel. Since the Rosh Gola had executive authority under the governance of the Persian kings, so therefore they were had imparted an executive authority to the Dayanim. Took some zu it was this with this the authority of this with the power of this authority, they added hara generation of generation. Sophie Miriam Amoraim at the end of the day of Amoraim, Miskila Punos Bevavel. The turmoil began above it. And these Batlam social Rosh Gola. At that point, the office of Rosh Gola was uh, um, went extinct. Yachim Sayasofara. That was the end of Barab. Memina Macheros. Nitla Fisha Tanomia Pnimis Vedan Israel Dunaros. For temporarily, at least, the internal autonomy of the Jewish judges to rule and to paskin was removed. So therefore, the Rabbanan, after this, is called Rabbanan Savurai, not because they were Mazbir, the words of the Gemara, but the Rabbanim Musmachim Muchim Lorod Gemire V'Svire. But rabbis who had a lesser degree of smicha, lesser degree of authority, they were authorized and experts to paskin because they learned and understood. Okay. Now, Bavel, there's never true smicha.
Right.
But according to the Sephrati, they had an alternative authority which came from the Reish Galusa. When
Okay.
that alternative authority ceased, so then they stopped even having that alternative authority, and then they had only the authority of their knowledge, not the executive authority of the Reish Galusa.
Mm-hmm.
Meantime, Rosh Galusa, they no longer had. I skipped, sorry. Shekibu Yad Sashmos, they received the sugyas. V'yodim Asmin, they knew explain them liyashay b'tamim and resolve the rationale. As Shlokibu Shusa, they didn't get the authorization. Haminu mitam Rosh Gola, the appointment from Rosh Gola. People lo yebekochem larosu tzabot shiva to speak, and they didn't have the power to issue rulings and to direct that people execute their rulings. The Kufas are the same, and to support and to compel people to listen to their psak. Ze efo sof hara. This therefore is the end of hara. Kaloshono. Fidvarav, according to what he says, muvan ktsas. It's a little bit understood. Shagam sholim sholu raka kufas achrei Ravina. That the people only ask after the period after Ravina. Hagam chu so he's King Yechoniah. Nonetheless, Reb Shir Gaon, even though they asked him about subsequent to Ravina, he began much earlier. Sheyesh kan lichora chavetz shlo le'inyan, which seems to be superfluous if they only asked about the authority of Rabbanan Savurai and on. I'll feel now, but based on this Efrati, Reb Shir Gaon limsolin shekayemes Rosh's gola gambi mei by Yesheni. There was the Exelarchy, even Dan's Beisheni, Vadain Tzorchim B'Cholzeh. All this requires for analysis, but it's a fascinating proposal. Okay?
It is. Very interesting. Again,
yeah.
It makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, that's obviously why he's bringing it down. Yeah. So, and I guess the next one in moments he's going to go into it in greater detail as well. But in the meantime, let's go back to the text on the screen. I want to explain to you the primary aspect of this. And how was the Rishonusa means here like the Rosh? How was the leadership of Am Yisrael? Previously, and how the two yeshivas divided up because there's distortion in the history of these institutions, evidently. Okay. So again, back to the printed text. Iavana miluli taus, literal translation, mistake. Tzareno to regret. We don't know what the mistake is that he's coming to counteract. The one that he says that also here on screen. No, it just says it's a mistake. Okay, so Avarisi Mikrov Ashrab Sharis Shel David Goldblatt. All these interesting names here. Rabbinic Instruction in Sasanian Babylonia. Who knew there was such a book? Shekidai Laskira, which is worth mentioning. Abi Shaloni Shar Shirgon Apamed Al Tartim Sivos Tivta Aide Zikne Quran. He was never asked about the two yeshivas by the elders of Quran. He wanted by himself to clarify the mistake which existed. When Reish Galusa wrote this letter, there's only one yeshiva. His yeshiva b'Madisa. Amasifta b'Sura Mechasya, was already abandoned for one generation. He says, now, Yamanim Shem Bekama Karos, you also know for several sources, we told Kama Shanim, we pursue my Iggeres, some within a few years after the letter was written, B'Shas Tal Alpin Tashmaz the Brias Olam, which is it's hard to figure that out. That is 1,037 years ago. No, 1,038 years ago. Was it 1,038 years ago? The year late 900s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Sifta Basura. Okay, the Sifta Basura was reopened. There probably was a plan to reopen this yeshiva at that time. Yeah, it goes back way back. They had financial difficulties. There was one yeshiva, and it's still financial difficulties. They were not interested in new competition. There So some Charash shir shel tmicha kasvis liyeshivos Bavel. He wanted to send this to Iran, which was the America of the time. Laros mitoch historia to show out of history kamuvam mitzvah kifa. All in a roundabout way. Shut kufus karvet kufas amoraim shak misifta achasois akamis. There was only one yeshiva, and we don't need a second yeshiva. Boy, I don't know how Rabbi Rabinowitz got away with this. This is pretty non-yeshivish. Yesh chazek hashozo apir we can support this assumption based on the idea shelinim avos shalanu shemachek sivas tshuva arukah zu behind this the writing of this long tshuva nikudim laod meosa tshuvos haksos Rabbi Shirgon as opposed to many short tshuvos Shirgon haminiya gadol. There was a great impetus. Generating a sizable donation from the Kiran Kihil. Okay. Don't write these things. Be as it may. Back to the screen. Base. Heavy Yodin. You shows me Karaka Goli Sub Gols Yechoniah Charash and Masger, began to be Mohem. When they went into Gols way back at Gols Yechoniah, which is Churban before Churban Bayis Rishon, of course, 11 years before Churban Bayis Rishon, when the Charash and Masger, which were the elders Sanhedrin, the great Tamil Chacham of the generation, went into Golos and several Nevi'im. I seen them in Ardah. They were brought to Ardah. I guess Yechoniah brought them to Ardah. No, he says in note Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay.
Okay. They built a shul there in Narada. But still and they found it, gets laid foundation with stones and dirt. Based on Mikdash. They brought it from the base on Mikdash. As to fulfill the pasuk which says, your slaves yearn for its stones, and they had mercy on its dirt. And they called that shul Shaf V'Yasiv. Shaf V'Yasiv. That's interesting because I thought that Shaf V'Yasiv meant it was destroyed and recreated. It is mentioned in the Gemara, this base matter.
Okay.
Down here.
Shaf V'Yasiv, Klamar Kafetim Kamo V'Yashav Kan.
Yeah, that's going to Yashav Khan. So he also learns in Shaf. I thought that Shaf means lashuf, like to rub down, that it was destroyed and then rebuilt. But evidently that's no. These what does he say here in the? Yeah, that it traveled. Okay, fine. And the Shekhinah was here in Bavel. Megillah, like it says in Megillah, Bavel Hecha Shari Shekhinah. Where's the Shekhinah in Bavel? Rav Mar Biknushta de Hutzo. It's in the shul in Hutzo. And Shmuel Mar Biknushta the Shaf V'Yasiv bin Nardah. The shul of the Shaf V'Yasiv Shul in Nardah. The Shaf V'Yasiv to me sounds like Altnoy. Like Altnoy Shul in Prague, right? The old new shul.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so the same Altnoy, Shaf V'Yasiv, same kind of rhythm to it. And same idea, right? Old and new, it's moved and rebuilt. Anyway, don't say Shekhinah in both places. It's sometimes here, sometimes there. Amar Abai said, "Tastily the chimrakna parsa hasam, rakna parsa hasam matzilna." I get credit that when I'm a parsa away from that shul, I daven. Not sure why he gets credit for that, but he says it's interesting. Parsa is away. I guess you already felt the influence. Like it says, about feeling the oh, so he says, no. So either way, he's learning it. I used to go into them. Not that I felt that the influence when I was a parsa away. But if I was within a parsa of them, I would go daven there.
Okay.
Okay. Um, uh, V'adak nisha dutzal krevi lebeisi shel Ezra Sefer. L'mata min Adahi. And this shul of Hutzal, it sounds like he knew where it was near the base of Ezra Sefer, and it's below Naradah. Uh, so in the text he says the print text so doing course Chazal being base medicine Yuchel Shel Ezra Sefer Vadayin Tzarchiyun. Abortion Ben Tzarchiy Shir Give a social Utzal in Naradah. Boom Badisa. So again. With the fundraising motive. So therefore, he wants to impress on them that Hutzal, right? Hutzal, where that shul was, and the shul of Ezra Sefer, that was also near Narda, where the base Medrash, the Shaf V'Yasiv Shul was, and all this was right near where we are today. Okay.
Wasn't he himself in Constantinople or something?
No.
He was
Later
still in
on,
Babel?
both yeshivas moved to Baghdad,
Okay.
but not in his time. His time is still in Pumbedisa, which he says is equivalent to Nardo. So, but at the end of the period of the Gaon, which is like 100 years later, they both they're already down the block from each other in Baghdad. It's like they both like Mir and Chevron are both in Yerushalayim. But at that time, Pumbedisa is still in Pumbedisa.
Okay.
Became Shalu as of his Bavel mi Bavel Agoli Moem Bona Beis Hamikdash when they let Bavel build the Beis Hamikdash Vayusham Rosh Sanhedrin Kon Shimon at Tzadik Bantikos Yisachol Shalos and Zugos Ruam mi Bavel Hayu Olim Vila Zakin mi Bavel Hayu Olet. Those things came from the Bavel. Ava became a Gemara Bitin Torhacha. Nevertheless, there were plenty of people who were teaching Torah here. Babylonian Reish Galusa, and they had the Reish Galusa, as we mentioned before, based on from the house of David. Russia Mesifta Sanhedrin lo yibon, but they didn't have Russia Mesifta and Sanhedrin. Evidently, the yeshiva they didn't have, formal yeshiva, and the
You mean in Eretz Yisrael they didn't have a
no
yeshiva?
Bavel.
Okay.
Uh,
The yeshivas were not established yet. There was learning, there was Torah, but there was no yeshivas.
yeah, but in the footnote here on the in the text, he and even here on the screen, he wants to make it clear. No, yeshivas they had didn't have Rosh yeshivas, and it means that the Rosh yeshiva had authority. They didn't have the authority while the Sanhedrin existed in Eretz Yisrael.
Okay.
Whatever authority we have as Rosh yeshivas today, or they had after the time of the Churban, that was in abeyance while there was the Sanhedrin in Eretz Yisrael.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what he says here. I'm a Tiras Rebbe. I'm Tiras Rebbe. I'm Rosh Yeshivas going for sure right? V'adai af kodim Tiras Rebbe havu lem Rosh Yeshivas b'vav shem dutar l'tamidim. Mi'ulo lem samchuyos shel Rosh Yeshivas l'dum likvar halacha. Right? They didn't have that authorization because the Sanhedrin had that, which is fascinating because they had executive authority. The Gemara Chulin says in Sanhedrin, says that there was more executive authority in Bavel at all times than in Eretz Yisrael during time by Sheni, but not for hara. It was in order to compel people to do things. Right? They had power of executive authority. They didn't have the authority of hara, which evidently somehow became vested in Bavel after Rabbi Yehuda Nasi.
Well, no, but we still know there was a Sanhedrin in Eretz Yisrael for a generation or two after Rebbe,
Yeah,
because
but evidently he holds that even though the Sanhedrin continued for some time, it already lost its significant authority. In other words, Bavel then rose to the fore, which I mean
okay.
that's the idea of Talmud Bavli, right? That's after Rebbe, things shift to Bavel, right? Takes a while, it's a transition, but things shift.
Okay.
Okay. So he says, Armin, this is what they used to say, the lo havu ela mina mokum yivchar Hashem. That this should only be from the place asher yivchar Hashem. Uh, so here in the in the printed text it says Sita Sanhedrin.
Okay, where are
Uh,
you in the text?
what? Page Kuf Samachay.
Proof Samachay, yeah.
Uh, Mesivta Sanhedrin. Metoch Einyan Bonir Borshim Mechrachim Machos as Mesivta Sanhedrin Kimos Dosehim. They're the same institution. Vav Chiber Kan Roshim Mesivta Sanhedrin Be'etzem Vav Hafrada. I
Oh,
know. Oh, okay. So Mesivta Sanhedrin are not identical. Even though it says Zehim, he means they are parallel institutions.
mm-hmm.
According to this Baruch Hachlim Tom Shagam Piska Abba, Rashi Mesit Nasim Hem Zaim. Tato Sashwa Abba. Rashi Sanhedrin, Nasim, Rashi Mesifta. Got Mesifta Sanhedrin. I have no idea what he's saying. That's Rambam Hilchos Sanhedrin Peragim Lochab Maskil'eshe Shvos Eil agrees with these parallels. Zoshono. Come B'tchila Beis Nagol Shebamikdash Hu Nikras Sanhedrin Gedola. Yom Ein Aleph Hagol Chachma Shekul Mashir So Rosh Aleim Fu Rosh Yeshivos Shkol Nesach Lamin Nesach Makom. No, he does say it's the same thing. What do you mean, Bav Afrada? It's
A lot of
not
times
Bav.
in the Mishnah, you'll have X, V, Y, and it means or.
Yeah, but so here it means
What's the
I
text?
don't. Even the word Sanhedrin is only in the. It only has in the in the Targum. It's missing in the. He took it out of the text in the printed text. It is on in the screen text. Um, I'm not sure. I don't know what he's doing. I don't think it's so important. And any event,
Well, look at 76. If you look at this, it says second line up on Kusamach Daled. Rashi Sanhedrin 76, Sanhedrin. So there's the different gersos.
yeah. Okay, but in any event, it's all means the same. It's confusing, but it really he means that in Eretz Yisrael, the head of the Sanhedrin is also called the Rosh Yeshiva.
Okay.
So in Bavel, they didn't have this office because it wasn't Malcolm Hashem Hashem, right?
Right.
They had to, and they Vadif the Rebbe until Rebbe died. Rosh Galios have a Nehigan. Bavel, they had Rosh Galios, right? The so you know what? If you'd like a look in the he on page Kuf he says like you in Rebbe Lefi Baal Doris Rishonim Sheminasel Chil Shekona Kani Rebbe Yehuda Nasiya. So it was even after Rebbe to Rebbe Yehuda Nasiya, which is
Mhm.
like two generations later. So in fact, yes, the fact that Sanhedrin should continue after Rebbe's Petira. Where Nasi Anasi Chim Mishpachs Hill V'nechto Shel Rabbi Nasi Who Ayon Nasi Achos Yosha Baruch Sanhedrin V'gam Baruch Shem Sita Beretz Yisrael. Abein Lo Masi Lo Namayo Amatzav Achrei Sheniftar Rebbe. So he wants to say that this Rebbe here is not Rabbi Nasi, but rather Rabbi Nasiya. Okay, so that's like you were
Okay.
trying to contend before.
Mhm.
Okay, but the Rebbe Rosh. I probably didn't say anything of this over here. Yeah. It doesn't say. Vadi Rebbe Rosh Galusa Vava below Rishim. So the Rosh Galusa Bava, but not Rishim Sifta in the Siyim. Didn't Rosh Sanhedrin Yisrael. Back in first Abbas Ad Hillel V'Shamai. So what Hillel V'Shamai have to do with this? I don't know. The way he says here, I don't have to explain to you. Klomar Ein Li Tzorach Fresh Lechem Seder Zugos Rosh Sanhedrin Hillel V'Shamai Shem Froshim Avos Perak Avos Esidron. Says that it's explained there in the here in the printed text. He says Lo bar b'limay kavanas b'shayim shir gon alay miskein l'masha kriya shitchisha shem misham meklu shechayu be'eretz Yisrael. Evidently, we know all this coming. So yes, Mishra Shemak Maskil'eshe so if you go see Rosh Sanhedrin. If you want to see who that's Sanhedrin, it says it there. It says long footnote your base, but no, just He wants to distinguish between yeshivos, which are in Bavel and for Rav and Shmuel, and mesiftas, which are only started from Rav and Shmuel. And he says that after P'tir Rabbi Nasiya, there became a distinction between the Sanhedrin and Mesifta, and in Eretz Yisrael, the Beis Haggadah was nullified. The Siftas in Eretz Yisrael were only for the purpose of figuring out the halacha, and then only then could Rabbi Shmuel call their yeshivas Mesiftas. Okay, that's a fascinating thing. I think it's all bogus.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow. What's he claiming?
He's saying the term Mesifta relates specifically to a yeshiva in which halacha is determined. There are two different types of yeshivas. There's yeshiva, which is generic for any place where the Torah is being learned, and mesifta, which is a term for a place where they come to some sort of evidently halachic conclusion, right?
Uh-huh.
Like so therefore he says, I'm going to read inside what I just said outside. He says, "L'fi dvarav achrei ptiras rabin nesiah nasa afrada gemura b'sanhedrin mesifta." But Yisrael is batel based in a Godesh called Yisrael. The base synagogue was nullified. Siftos gam Eretz Loshim Shukim Luchikur Dim Bilbad. Any Masifti in Eretz was downgraded. Rak Azichu Raushim Larshosa Likro Yeshiva say Masiftos. Only then could they upgrade in Bavel and call themselves Masiftos. Okay, so
Mhm.
basically, he's saying that the Masiftos were places where halacha could be generated, and it moved to Bavel after the death. They were able to set them up in Bavel after the death of Rabbi Nasiya.
Mhm.
Because he says the when it says in the text, it says "Va'adiv Torah goes to Nigim Bavel below Rushim is Sifta." In the scene, it means they didn't have a katzah in their Sifta, right? The concept of Sifta only came about after the death of Rabbi Nasiya.
Mhm.
Okay, fascinating stuff. I think we'll stop here. He starts a new parak
Okay.
here. Pretty cool. Shkoyach.
Sure. All right. So we'll be in touch.
Good stuff. Okay, have a good week.
You too. Bye.